So many of the high-performing elite people in their fields have autism. Your Lionel Messi's, your Elon Musk, Einstein.
Instead of running out of the classroom and no one knowing where they are, profanity might come out. We're teaching them the skills that is more appropriate in mainstream.
You're listening to Around the School Table, hosted by me, Steve Davis, and proudly powered by Zuno Suite. We'll be bringing together the many voices shaping primary and secondary education across Australia, from principals and teachers to education thought leaders and system innovators. Whether you're in the classroom, the staff room, or the boardroom, this is your podcast to be informed, inspired, and connected. Today on Around the School Table, we're shining a light on how schools can better support autistic students and build truly inclusive communities. Our guests are Kendall Lange, Principal of North Mandurah Primary School, and Wendy Tregenza, who leads their Specialised Learning Program for Autism, SLPA, in Western Australia. Kendall and Wendy have seen firsthand how approaches to autism have changed, from silence to one-size-fits-all to today's personalised support. And in this episode, they'll share some practical insights on recognising invisible disabilities, setting individual goals, and creating a school culture where every student can feel happy, successful, and connected. If you're looking for real-world strategies to make your school more inclusive, I think this conversation is going to be for you. Kendall and Wendy, welcome to Around the School Table.
Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
You both lead at the primary school and within the Specialised Learning Program for Autism, a space that's evolved significantly over a number of years. I touched on the evolution of our approach to and our recognition of autism in the introduction, but what have been some key turning points in that process, and what's that meant for classroom teachers along the way?
Well, I think in our space at North Mandurah here, having the SLP on site has allowed our teachers to become more inclusive and understanding of students with autism. Having the skill set here in the SLP has allowed training on site to happen because of the change in the neurodiverse space at the moment. We've been able to go to lots of training and PL and bring that back and support our teachers here and understanding that there has been a big shift in the neurodiverse space in the last few years. Yeah, so that's been really good for all of our teachers here.
If you're going to point out some landmarks along that journey, what are some of the turning points that have happened along the way? I mean, even me, I was making sure that I had the correct terminology for our interview today because I'm conscious that our understandings and sensibilities have shifted along the way.
Yeah, I think part of that switch was understanding, embracing the talents that these kids bring and the unique attributes that they all have. So you're right that it used to be that sort of one-size-fits-all approach where, okay, we've got autism and this is what we do for kids with autism, to understanding that every autistic child presents with a unique set of skills and unique set of challenges. But if you can tap into that, they actually enrich your classrooms. So bringing that back to the kids too. So some of the kids in the program are, our high achieving top academic kids. Some are uniquely talented within their art space or wherever their passions and interests lie. If we can find a way to successfully bring them back into the classroom, mainstream classrooms, then that's an enriching experience for them and for the other kids around them. So that became a big one, and it's sort of changing those attitudes between, kids being on the outside, the sort of ed support model, I guess, that used to be in place, to an inclusion model where the kids actually belong first and foremost in their mainstream classrooms. And the work done in the autism program is about how do we equip those kids to succeed and function in their classroom rather than how do we teach them in their outside space.
I want to dig deeper into that in just a moment, but yeah. I've got to share something with you that this phrase, invisible disability, it's really stuck with me. Given that autism doesn't always present outwardly, what are the cues that teachers are trained to look for?
Well, I suppose that's really tricky because every student with autism does present so differently. And one student might be masking all day and look like the perfect student in the classroom and go home and then display completely different behaviours at home. That's why, you might hear parents say, oh, but they don't act like this at school, or they don't act like this at home, vice versa. And then you might get another student who is displaying quite dysregulation in the classroom, where their behaviours are quite heightened, and are going to need that extra support to regulate in the classroom with extra staff. So it can look so different. And the reason it's an invisible disability is, if someone was to walk down our classroom halls and into our classrooms, our students, they look the same as everybody else. They don't have those complex needs with, a physical disability per se. They're challenged in their own way. And, if you walk into a mainstream classroom with some of our students, they will not look out of place, but they will feel out of place. So that's where we come in and support and guide them and give them strategies that they can engage more in a mainstream classroom.
Some of it's just embracing the messaging from home too, that sort of collective approach, because there used to be a phase in teachers where they're like, as long as the kid's successful in my classroom, the kid's being successful, and we didn't quite hear the messaging from parents, which is, but second they walk out of the gate, they just completely break down, unload, and what you have it. So and that's sort of not a sustainable approach too. Sometimes it's teaching teachers to listen to that messaging that's coming back.
That leads nicely into this whole area of diagnosis, because it's complex. It requires medical, home and school observations all together. Nobody's an island. Can you walk us through what the assessment process typically looks like, and how you then set individual goals for these students and track their progress? Big question.
There's a big question, but there's a few layers to that. So first of all, to be eligible for our program, students need to be diagnosed with autism. And there's 2 criteria, which is the social communication and interaction. And then that can be a level 1, 2 or 3, depending on how they're assessed on that. And then there's the repetitive behaviours interests. So there are a lot of students, and again, they're all very different. There are a lot of students that do have repetitive interests. And what we then do is we will tap into those interests and we'll use their strengths to help guide their learning in our school. And that's where a lot of their IEP, which is their individual education goals, come from. So we discuss with families and therapists, and we basically have big round the table conversations about how can we best support this child using a strengths-based approach and a neurodiverse-affirming approach. So this is our space and our time where we can really talk about their strengths there and utilise that to engage further in their mainstream classrooms.
Like a lot of the work for that happens before the kids even get to the autism program. So just the diagnosis of autism is difficult and complicated. It's a lengthy process, an expensive process for a lot of parents, because they can't produce a simple checklist of autism. So this is, to have autism, you need to display all of these things. No kids display all of the things on those checklists. So that's a challenging itself, just getting parents to the door. And, teachers are teachers. We're not medical professionals. So we're like, we can say, look, we think the kid's not quite hitting the benchmarks or the milestones for this point in their journey. Maybe you need to have a look at like a medical pathway first, so that we can sort of get them on that pathway. So, because a lot of conditions present with similar symptoms, but different underlying causes.
You just touch on there this tension between digital and analog almost, where you've got the guidelines, very digital, and the analog, the human observations and the subtleties that a human notes. Do you have much agency to be able to draw things to the attention of frameworks and authorities where it might not be 100% here, but you can provide some evidence that this child is falling within this category, etc.?
We don't have any sort of pull when it comes to getting the diagnosis. We can only support at a school level. If that's what you're sort of meaning with that sort of, we can't really sway. And a lot of the parents, this all happens outside of our environment.
And it's a shifting space too. Like there's discussions recently in WA about, nationally, about GPs being able to diagnose for ADHD as a shift in space to sort of address some of those times and wait loads. So hopefully that's a assign and shift just to become more responsive and more immediate to some of our families.
Before we leave bureaucracy altogether, the National Consistent Collection of Data, or NCCD, it's the national framework for reporting details of students with disability for funding. How are you managing the data and those requirements?
Well, I suppose I can touch on the structure of our program in that aspect, where we are highly staffed in the program, and we are lucky in that aspect that we then have the staff to take data on our students and, how successful they're being in their mainstream classrooms. Are they engaged? Are they on task? Are they off task? And I suppose, with us having small class sizes as well and highly staffed, we're able to have those staff sort of supporting in the classrooms and taking that data.
Is that day by day, that data?
We take it day by day, yes.
Wow, that's like a mini version of NAPLAN almost every single day.
It's not that it's not the NCCD data that we're taking.
Yeah.
We take different type of data,
Right.
yes. And every day we're taking data on those students to see how successful they are in mainstream.
And the NCC data is great sort of nationally at a level in terms of planning, medical services and availability. It doesn't really impact school funding at a school level.
Okay.
So that sort of goes through different metrics and things as well. So that data is important. It certainly is. It helps us, plan at state levels for interventions and things. But yeah, it doesn't quite affect us in the classroom.
I always think feedback loops are helpful, though. Is there nothing that the teachers get from being to look back on the data of their students?
Certainly. It doesn't really give them the individualised support that the kids need out of that program, though.
Yeah.
So that support at that level is much more detailed, much more personalised, much more individual, and shifting so fast. The strategies we use for our kids at the start of the year could be completely different and shifted by, shifting interest levels, shifting passions. So by the end of the year, it's not particularly relevant anyway. It's just such a shifting space. So I guess you've got to be open to that too, best laid plans and all of that with our teachers, that we've got to be willing to adapt quickly and pivot and shift.
Well, I want to pick up on that because I just get the impression, you use the word passion there, that the staff that you have here, it's got to be about attitude, very much a Richard Branson thing, with the skills then something that gather around that. It almost seems to be more important than prior specialisation. It's a mindset almost. If I'm right, what are you looking for in these teachers and these staff?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's, we are looking for staff that basically have a passion for students with a disability and, having that understanding that not one size does fit all, and have that compassion and understanding of the needs of the students. And like Kendall was saying, it is such a shifting and moving space all the time. And in the environment in an SLP classroom, one day is so very different to the next. And having it on site here at North Mandurah Primary School, where we are one school, we're able to transition the students in and out, and students and staff as well are able to come into our classrooms, and we sort of share our ideas and share our passion, and that's feeding through to everyone here at our school. And all the teachers are on board and understanding of the students' needs, and they're very open to if there's any differentiation that needs to happen, and supports that are put in place, and they are able to then transfer those skills into their mainstream classrooms as well.
It's a shifting space in many respects. So when the program opened, I think 6 years ago, the teachers that we recruited were able to specifically target into that space. So they were great, but the program opened in an already established school too. So it was shifting the mindset of our teachers in the mainstream classrooms as well to how do we embrace these kids. So it was all well and good for them to succeed in their isolation in their slipper classrooms. They need to go back into their mainstream classrooms, and we quickly realised we had to do a lot of work with our teachers and them to how to embrace these kids, the uniqueness that they bring to your classrooms, how to welcome them and have them enrich your space as well, and not see them as a burden coming into that space too. So once you sort of have your eyes open to what these kids can bring and how they can enrich your space, then it changes the whole dynamics of your school.
I'm reminded of, that saying, he who dares wins. It's he who cares, or they who care wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And we saw that quickly when they, in the early data, and that the kids would do really well in their slipper classrooms, but transition much better in some teachers' classrooms than in others. And so you had to stop and look at, well, what is it about those people that the kids feel so welcome and so comfortable and so happy coming into, that they're able to, transition and succeed so well here, but maybe not so well over there. So having to look at, what those things were, try and bring them across the whole school.
Still juggling forms the old-fashioned way? Say hello to Student Forms by Zuno. You can create, collect and manage all your student forms online in one simple, secure platform. Save time, stay organised and quick access everything you need anytime. Visit zuno.com.au and see how Student Forms by Zuno can work for your school.
I believe you work with a teacher who celebrates famous people with autism with pictures of them around her classroom. Why is this so important?
Oh, look, our kids just love seeing what they could reach to. So we are in a primary school and, we do have a lot of students that have negative thoughts about themselves. So, we're trying to teach them that you can reach for the stars. You can be anyone you want to be. You have these strengths that are just so amazing. Let's tap into these strengths and let's see what we can do for you to help there, because there are some people in this world like Richard Branson and all these other ones that she's got posted around her room that have made a full successful life for themselves, even though having this invisible disability and having to, jump over hurdles and have a lot of difficulties in their life. So, yeah.
So helping them see that, like, as much as it's a disability and a challenge, it's often a unique an asset in some aspects of life too. So many of the high-performing elite people in their fields have autism. So, your Lionel Messi's, your Elon Musk's, Einstein, when you go back a little bit further into this, the great minds of the past and that sort of unique focus that these kids can bring to a topic that they care about, trying to give them that to hold on to.
I think it's beautiful that even earlier in this conversation I was referring to Richard Branson to make a different point, having forgotten that he sits within this cluster.
Yeah.
These programs, they're only about 7 years old, I believe, so it's a bit early for long-term data, but I hear you're seeing some clear signs of success. What does that look like to you? How do you describe that and tell these stories?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate definition of success for the program is the kid fully functional in a mainstream setting without support. So that's the ultimate definition of success. But there are a lot of, lead through, like markers that we look on the way through. Getting kids to transition and feel at home in their mainstream classrooms, increasing the amount of time that they spend there, teaching them those sort of strategies they need for success in life, so social strategies. So conflict resolution, what does that look like? Emotional regulation, what does that look like? What do you do? Because they're often some of the challenges the kids face more than the academic or the performance stuff. It's the social elements of life. So specifically teaching them how to respond in certain situations.
That's right. So like Kendall's saying, success for one student is so different to another student. Yes, saying that they're successful by exiting the program into mainstream, but yet, we might have a student who is able to now regulate themselves instead of flipping a table. They can now request a break. So they're massive gains and life skills that these kids need moving forward into high school.
Yeah. So for some of our kids, academics is not an issue. Like, they can learn one-on-one by themselves, perfect. But working as a team, working with others becomes a huge challenge. So their goals is there. For others, autism may present a barrier to learning in some spaces. So teaching them how to navigate that with a specific focus on the academics becomes their definition of success. So finding out where each of their challenges lies changes that definition on the way through. The ultimate definition is, successful contribution to society, right? Out there, able to make a difference and happy. Like, are they happy at school?
Yeah, which means more than the classroom, doesn't it? It means the playground and after hours extracurricular stuff.
Yeah, and we've talked about that as what the definition looks like here. Am I happy at school? Do I have friends? Am I successful?
Oh.
We use that as our definition for what success looks like at a school level in the classroom.
I think we all should.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good set of rubrics to me. There was talk about this reverse integration model used in the high school programs where students begin in mainstream and step into the SLP as needed. How does that compare with the primary model, and what can be learned from each?
We adopt elements of that into our own program. So all our kids now start the day in their mainstream classrooms just to build that sort of belonging and acceptance with their teachers, so that, when the kids come and go, it's not a surprise. They're actually starting there in terms of that integration. So we've taken elements of that in terms of what we're doing as well. I guess their model was built on our model being successful. So starting with the kids and building them up to a point where the majority of their time is spent in their mainstream classrooms, and then they only need to come out at point of need to deal with specific details and consequences or challenges that arise. Whereas initially, when they come into the program, their needs are a lot higher in all of the areas. So it's starting from there and just slowly increasing them so that the high school can then do their job, which is just detailed point of need.
Is primary school a long enough runway?
Sometimes not.
Depends when you get them.
Yeah, it depends when they come in. That's all right. So they can come into the program at any stage whenever there's a vacancy in that year level. So they don't necessarily all start in kindy, pre-primary or year 1. Sometimes they might start in year 3 or year 4, because then, ideally then we can make a change and make a difference and help them transition to high school.
I believe every student in your school has an individual education program, or IEP, with the goal of returning to mainstream. What are some of the strategies or the scaffolds that you use to support the transition?
Okay, well, there's lots depending on the student. So first of all, each of our students have a individual timetable on their desk, all visual, and it depends on the age and the capabilities of those students. So our kindy pre-primary students, they have little visuals. They might take off a token once they've finished, take off a visual, beg your pardon, and once they finish that task, it gets in their little pocket. And then moving forward into, say, year 1, 2, 3 space, they all have a daily timetable on their desk. So they can track their day, so it's very predictable. They know what's coming. There's no surprises. And then when they get to the higher grades, it might be a whole week view timetable where they can see what's happening throughout their week and they can track it that way. Other supports are we might have break cards, we might have access to our trampolines that they can jump on if they need a sensory break. We have special friends in other classrooms and they can work for these friends. So we have non-contingent reinforcements put into their timetables as well, so they can access other things during that time if that's at the point of need. We have a token economy system, which is where our students will get tokens for showing the behaviours that might be working for in their IEP. Say a student might be working on how to sit on a chair properly because that's like an expected behaviour for a mainstream. Every time they sit on their chair properly, they'll get a token for that. So when they get their 5 tokens for showing that particular behaviour, then they can access whatever it is they're working for, whether it be a jigsaw puzzle, the slime, going outside of the swing, bouncing on the trampoline, kicking the footy, whatever it is. And these token economy systems run all day, every day in all the programs, and, multiple times a day, multiple times a day. So it's not like they just get it once. So they all know that they are getting something out of it. And they are extrinsically motivated. We know that with students that have autism, they are extrinsically motivated. They're not going to come to school and do anything for nothing. What are they going to get out of it? So we work with that. So it's a bit like us going to work. We don't want to go to work just for the fun of it, even though we do love our job. We do it because we need to get paid. So students, our autistic students, they're going to want something out of it. So we work with that and we find out what are their strengths and what are their interests and what they want to do. And that way we can sort of all be on the same page working together. And as long as they're happy, calm and relaxed at school, that's what we want. So, there's lots of other scaffolds in place, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Are there any black markets for those tokens that have developed?
Try and get some for yourself, like some tokens.
So that was my first day at the school. Scott, I've got a business plan. Can I get approval? I was like, okay,
wow,
let's have a look at that.
And also, Wendy, when you told me before, you mentioned break cards. I think that's what you said. What do you mean by them? What?
So we have some students that, for example, it could be a a break, maybe they're becoming somewhat dysregulated in their mainstream classroom. It might be a bit overwhelming. It could be the fact that maybe the work's been a little bit tricky, the noise might be too loud, there might be a certain smell. Instead of running out of the classroom and no one knowing where they are, or, sometimes some profanity might come out, we're teaching them the skills that is more appropriate in the mainstream world. So what is more appropriate than running out and swearing at someone? Well, how about we say, can I please have a break? Absolutely. And we always honour their requests for things like that too, because we know that they're learning the skills on how to replace the behaviour that they're actually having difficulty with. So the replacement behaviour could be a break card, and where the child is at, whether they request it, whether they flip a card over on their desk from green to red and they just walk out, or they go and hand it to the teacher. Again, it all depends on where the capabilities are in that student. And then they can go out and have a break. And breaks are different to rewards for our students. So breaks are breaks to regulate themselves. They can go for a walk if it's what they need. If it's a sensory break and we know that they might need a bounce on the trampoline, they can do that. But again, it depends on the student and what they need at that point of time. And then after 5 minutes, their timer will go. They can come back. If they need more time, they can have more time, because we know breaks, you can't really time those, because how long is it going to take for us to become regulated after we've had a fight with our partner? 5 minutes? No, might take half an hour. Same with our students. But on rewards, they all get different times for rewards, and they're all set on a timer, and then they come back after their timer and they can work for it again.
I don't know if you two know this, but as you talk about this subject, you both light up. You really do. And it makes me wonder, as you were talking about the scaffolding, the various aspects of this program, there are elements of this that would be generally helpful for all of us in the so-called mainstream. Have you ever pondered that, or does that strike you at all?
Yeah, constantly, I guess. And when we look at how do we roll out the learnings from the program, both across our school, but then to the other schools that we work with as well. Because at the end of the day, look, we're a feeder school with some of these kids from all our surrounding schools. So we're not just taking kids in Boundary. Kids come specifically for that program, but they need somewhere to go at the end of the program too. And the idea of the program is they go back to their mainstream schools. So we then want to be able to work with and support those schools in terms of using the strategies that we've learned work in their classrooms across their schools for the benefit of these kids, but really for the benefit of every kid sitting in front of them.
Last question, you two would be the best ones to ask. Any school leader listening to this who might be wondering how to better include and support autistic students, not just in program but across the school, what's a piece of advice that you'd give them? I'd love to hear from both of you on this one.
Well, I'll go first. I think that you need to focus on their strengths. Find out what it is that they like. Use that to your advantage, because like I said, most of our autistic kids are extrinsic learners. They want to get something out of it. So find out what it is that they want to work for, use that in your favour, and build strong relationships with those kids, because if you haven't got relationships with those kids, they're not going to want to bar of you. So I would suggest that have an open mind, be kind, be open, and I think then, you're going to get a long way with these kids.
Yeah, I think the advice that we always have to give is to see the person underneath the challenge. So on the surface, these kids can present with some quite big behaviours, some quite dramatic challenges, but there's a person underneath that and a skill set and a talent that if we can find it and unleash it, can do some pretty amazing things. So it's learning to see that, and it's difficult teaching stuff to 30 kids, these kids on top. It's like, but if we can unlock that, yeah, there's something special.
Kendall Lange, Wendy Tregenza, thank you for joining me around the school table.
Thank you.
You're welcome.